it's Phil Ratcliff, live from our studio in our living room here at Rebel Financial. Welcome to another show. Today we've got something that I think is super interesting, and a lot of people might think of it as obscure, or that it doesn't apply to them, or it's another geek subject, but it is really going to be important to just about everyone's life. And that is the blockchain. So the blockchain is something, that was developed maybe 7 or 8 years ago, that was obscure, and now really with the rise of cryptocurrencies and especially Bitcoin, it's out in the mainstream and people have heard about it. And I think a lot of people think that that is the only applicability of that technology, but it absolutely isn't. And the things that you haven't heard of are actually going to be the things that are most important and that will make a difference in your life. So, first of all, I'm going to share the screen with you, and I am going to explain to you a little bit about, as simply as I can, what the blockchain is, okay? So first, I've got this little page up here. We don't talk about it much, but this is our news site. We do a very good job of posting a lot of different articles. So check out our news.rebelfinancial.com and keep up, even when you're not watching the show. It's pretty good. But I like this site. It's called blockgeeks.com. And there's all kinds of information on here. If you do want to get into it a little bit more immersive, they actually have little, almost like modules or classes that you can learn and take your knowledge of this up as far as you want to. But there's a really good quote on here in terms of when we say, what is blockchain? And this one's from Don Alex Tapscott. And the blockchain is an incorruptible digital ledger of economic transactions that can be programmed to record not just financial transactions, but virtually everything of value. And so I know that still sounds complicated, but basically what it is when we look online, there is a record of whatever you want to store in the blockchain that's encrypted in a way that under current technology and probably a good bit for the foreseeable future is unbreakable. And not only that, but it is decentralized. So any person that's part of the network, and you may heard people like making Bitcoin or mining things or what so, these computers, millions of them, keep track of the exact same data. And that's why they say it's incorruptible, because if one person tried to manipulate one computer, all the other ones would just say, no, that's not right. And so in that respect, it's very open source. It's not very able to be manipulated. And it's not controlled by a single government or entity or anything. So that's really cool. And the other side of things, it's not just currency. We see it in currency, but it can be anything of value. So you can actually run down through this little article right here. It's a guide on the Block Geeks called What is Blockchain Technology, and it does a great job. But I like their little infographic here, because we learn a lot of times through seeing pictures or actually doing things. And of course it's hard to do this, so let's take an illustrative picture here. Again, compliments of the Block Geeks here. But now again, I think this one leans a little bit more towards cryptocurrency, but it doesn't matter. The concept is the same. But somebody wants to do a transaction, say it's buying a house or changing hands of Bitcoin or making a contract with somebody else. All these different computers out there that are on this peer-to-peer network, that's what that P2P stands for, have all of who owns what kinds of transactions you're trying to do. They validate it. Then the computers that are actually working, after they validate, then if you actually make a transaction or an action occurs, then they are going to add a new block to that chain through an encryption process, and then that's what actually makes the transaction happen, and then it's registered. And one could go back through this whole series of blocks and see transparently what happened, who owned what, who owns it now, etc. And so it's really an awesome technology. And in a second, I'm going to kind of get to, why is that important? And really, this is the crux of everything, is we have, I don't even know how big it is. I would say somewhere between a quarter to a half of our entire economy are built on industries that are there to validate trust or to be middlemen. And when we can have a process to where we feel really confident that we can trust the other party that we're doing business with, maybe not just because of them, but because the process is inherently infallible, we don't need middlemen. And this is going to be the real revolution of blockchain technology as it is developed, as it is tested, as people get used to it, and it's not some nerdy Star Trek thing or what so. It is how we do business. I mean, we take for granted now that we need a mortgage broker or a banker or a title agency or somebody to validate that so-and-so has the money or owns the property. And these things may not be needed at all in the future, and the speed of transactions will increase. The costs will go down, hopefully, exponentially. So when we think about this whole why is it important, I think that's the number one thing, is it is going to reduce costs and add a whole new capability of what's possible out there. It's going to increase trust. Again, not because we're going to inherently trust people more, but because the process is going to make it, as long as you do things right, almost impossible to defraud or do things that would be considered untrustworthy. It would be hard to get around the system. It will give us a lot more security and dependability and decentralization, so we don't have to depend on a particular corporation or government. And so that's going to be great, you know, for freedom and transparency and living our lives how we want to as a people and not under the control of a particular government or even people or organizations that are just wealthy. So I think this is an awesome thing for the future of humanity as well, if not great for middle class, because we can, again, that P2P, go peer-to-peer. We can do business with each other without those middlemen who a lot of times are just sucking money out of us. So let's look at some examples of how it can be used. And first, why not? You know, touch on the one that's so just in your face, out there, what has gotten all the media exposure, why the technology was developed in the first place was cryptocurrency. So obviously the main one that people know is Bitcoin, because they see it in the news. It's really rocketed up, but you know, there's over 1,000 different currencies now. And really these currencies, if we go back to the screen share right here, and I'm still looking at that same infographic, but we look here, and cryptocurrencies have no intrinsic value. They're not redeemable for any other commodity or good. They're not backed up by any government or what so. They have no physical form, so you can't go and trade them in for a piece of paper, like a dollar bill or what so. And the supply is not determined by a government or other entity, more by what's able to be created as people mine or what so. And this is good and bad. I mean, right now we're kind of at the beginning of this technology, even though it has been around for 7 or 8 years. But in terms of what form is this going to take? Right now, I feel like, you know, there is some exchange going on. You can buy things with Bitcoin, but there's also a lot of speculation. And of course, there's speculation in other currencies that are backed by governments or what so. But where we really need to get to is where there's enough supply and enough people that trust that we can start to use it as a real medium of exchange that stabilizes. And hopefully a few of these cryptocurrencies will produce that amount of supply, and people will come to see doing business easily with those, and I think that will be a good thing. In the short term, be very wary. We are an investment advisor. We help our clients with investments. Cryptocurrency, as it stands now, is not a good investment for the majority of your goals or what so. It's very, very speculative, and there's going to be huge price swings. And again, there is no underlying intrinsic value or trade-in, so it really is very dependent on just what people think, okay? And so be very careful of it in that respect. Even though we very much like blockchain, we like cryptocurrency, it's not something you want to go trade in a lot of your money and other stocks and bonds and investments for. So let's go beyond that, because I think cryptocurrency is awesome. It's really brought things out, but I think that is just really the tip of the iceberg in terms of what's going to be the most important part of things. And so again, if you run down through this, it's great, and people bring up good points. Like this guy right here, if you're looking at my screen, this is Vitalik Buterin, inventor of Ethereum. You know, I think we look at things very much from a developed world perspective, but you look at a lot of places that don't have as stable of an economic system or are more corrupt. I know a lot of people would probably argue that Europe and the United States are corrupt enough in their own ways as well, but blockchain solves a lot of the trust issues in terms of like big governments and corporations. And you know, here we may trust, you know, the banks and credit unions and what's so, but in a lot of countries there's no trust in those organizations. You know, they could be ripping people off left and right, or the government could seize something or what's so. So having something like this that a powerful person or government just can't manipulate and take your stuff away, man, that's hugely important. And without trust, you can't have a good stock market. You can't have a good marketplace of exchange. And really, that's what helps us grow, is our ability to trade with each other and specialize. And that's how we've gotten as far as we have as a human race. And a lot of the world is not able to do that. And this is going to be an awesome invention just for that. But again, you can go all the way down through here and look at these things. And then, you know, just an example, let me open this one up so you can see it too. But just an example of how you see things now, like say with a bank or government controlling thing, and you see these movies about hackers coming in and knocking things down like our grid or, you know, certain money or stock market. I mean, this is how things are controlled. There's some big central thing that links out to these. Whereas you get, you know, decentralized, or look at these distributed ledgers, all these different computers each have their own copy, and even if you were to take one or two down, it doesn't matter. The system exists. It's very persistent. Okay, so let's get into some of the other examples that can be used. I think one of the most exciting ones, and this one I imagine is in use already, and you'll get to see it more and more, is smart contracts. So if we want to enter into some contract with some other person, you know, there were all kinds of intermediaries that we had to go through, from attorneys to, you know, if you need to verify assets, hold money in escrow, etc. And then making sure that everybody did their part, and then how do you hold them accountable? Well, with smart contracts, after it's built, then it is almost like a computer program that once you start it, it runs, right? You can't stop it. And then depending on everybody doing what they're supposed to, it executes different ways, or penalizes people for not doing what's right. And so this is going to be a game changer, because again, we will be able to directly do business with each other and have tons of confidence that whatever is supposed to be agreed upon will actually happen without anybody being able to circumvent or cheat or whatever the case. And so it's going to be great. It's going to drive the cost down immensely, and it's going to drive the confidence up that every time what is supposed to happen happens. I think then you go beyond that, or maybe it's connected to that, and you look at the sharing economy. And so that word's thrown out a lot. What's the sharing economy? I mean, you probably have done an Airbnb or HomeAway, or use the Uber or Lyft, and you know, how much better is the quality of what you get for the price, and the just immense variety of things that you can do, rather than just a standardized hotel room or, you know, taxi cab. It's beautiful, and it's only going to get better and better, and the costs are going to drive down. And then you think about this sharing economy right now, again, there's all these middlemen standing in the middle, but eventually we're going to be able to connect peer-to-peer, and even for smaller things, like say you don't have camping gear, but somebody in your neighborhood does, well, you could have a smart contract and then some website that connects you, or some service, and there's no middleman there, and not everybody has to own everything. So we're all going to have a lot higher quality of life in our ability to share these things. So the sharing economy is going to be awesome. Crowdfunding, you know, this is one of my pet peeves, and one of the things that I hope that we can help our clients with, and lots of people into the future. Right now, to accomplish our goals, when we work hard and we save up our money, we need to invest. And the safest traditional things to invest in are publicly traded companies and governments. So with the companies, we can own them and own equity. That's when you own stock, or a mutual fund that owns stock. That's what that is. You're an owner of that company. You can own bonds. You could lend to them. You could lend to the government, and there's varying levels of safety. And then we just want to put those eggs in different baskets in the smartest way possible to make an awesome compound rate of return, so that eventually our money makes money for us instead of us just always having to work our entire life to make money. That's the idea, right? But when you really think about it, what are we doing? We are buying companies in which the entrepreneurs have already cashed out. I mean, that's what happens when they go public. And so generally the people that started the companies and so they're not in charge anymore. They don't own them anymore. And, you know, you get a lot of aristocrats and wealthy people that are buying these and owning them or running them. And then we're jumping on top after that. So we've missed a lot of the growth in the beginning. And then beyond that, you know, we are providing the funding or the money to make generally rich people richer, or funding some of the government things that we don't necessarily believe in. And so crowdfunding will allow us to invest in each other, right? And so if we could do some of this peer-to-peer where we felt safe, etc., then we could invest in each other when we have good ideas. No going on Shark Tank or venture capitalists or whatever, ripping people off for their hard work and ideas and what's so. We can benefit from their great ideas. They can get capital better, and we can invest in each other and maybe stop some of this, you know, the wealthy owning everything. Let's invest in each other and create wealth for ourselves. And then we could also do a similar type thing with micro lending. So lending, you know, to people in developing countries, or even in developed countries that are kind of on the bottom right now, where it's almost impossible for them to get a loan, or some payday lender is just going to rake them over the coals. We could earn a good rate of interest that would be great for us. And if we diversify and have trust in terms of the contract terms and stuff, I mean, these could pay better than a lot of the junk bonds and high yield bonds and emerging market debt that's out there, and we don't even like what they're doing with the money. So there's this whole thing that's coming up. I'm going to kind of skip because, man, I'm really, I can talk, right? Governance and voting. With the blockchain, we could all just vote on our phones, and we could open up a whole new page of democracy and take control of our futures instead of this representative government that we have. Hopefully you have representative government, but to where, again, the aristocrats are in charge of our futures instead of us being in charge of them. It's great. Intellectual property. If you develop something, you won't just have to go through this slow government process, or not be able to enforce it in one country to another, or not even be able to keep track of it. The Internet of Things, this word gets tossed out a lot, but you know, if you have a smart home with a smart thermostat, or you have cameras or light switches or receptacles that you can control, there's a lot of security vulnerabilities in these things. And then how do we protect them? Know who owns them, who uses them, who has control of the data if you do use some of these services. Blockchain is going to be able to help us with this as well too, especially as we, you know, peak up to the billions or even trillions of devices that may one day be on our web, etc. And I think one of the most important things is identity management and online reputation, because this is the future. You know, instead of credit reports or what so, we will all kind of vote on people like eBay and on Amazon for who's a good seller, buyer, a good person who deserves to get lent to or start a business, or even in elections or whatever the case. These online reputations are going to be important. And then if we do get some kind of rules in terms of maybe having artificial intelligence, you know, patrol like our police force of online, then these bad people that are hackers or doing bad things, there's no way around, you know, faking yourself online. And if you do something bad, it could be even worse than a prison sentence. You could be banned from doing business online, which could be catastrophic. It'd be like throwing you into the dark ages. And so that could be the penalty for trying to be a hacker or doing bad things, and it could be great. Now, of course, there are always potential for abuses, but we're not going to get into that. The last thing I'd like to do really fast. I hope you've got a lot from this. I apologize, it is a mile a minute. I try to break it down as simple as I can. Obviously, if you read into some of the stuff that I recommended, it can get a lot more complex than this. But I want people to understand this is not just something for nerds and geeks and something that's going to blow over that's a fad. It's going to change people's lives, just like the internet did, just like smartphones have. And this is going to wiggle down into everyone's life, and hopefully for the vast majority of us make it better. And even if you're in one of those professions that I mentioned that you could be at risk in the trust economy, there's going to be lots of other things to do and opportunities that come from this. It's not the end of the world. So we're going to switch cameras here. So I'm going to use this little camera right here, and I'm going to take you over, and I'm going to show you. We've been experimenting a lot. So this is in our conference room. We set it up to kind of be part of that peer-to-peer network. This is our mining. Right now it's kind of a prototype. It's not very big, but it has the capability to expand out to 19 different GPUs. So graphical processing units. And that's really the processing power that it takes to do this encryption work on a lot of the blockchain, especially the cryptocurrency. I mean, it's pretty cool. It's just an experiment for us. We like to show our clients how it works. And we'll probably expand this to 8. I really don't have control of the electrical in this building, so obviously I can't suck up too much. I'm doing a little bit more at my home where I've installed solar panels or what so. And so you can kind of see here, you know, this is one of the good graphics card. It's a 1080 Ti, but really these things should MSRP, you know, for $500 or $600, but they go for anywhere between $900 and $1,700 right now because of the demand with the popularity of the cryptocurrency and what so. So hopefully that will change in the future. We'll switch back to the main camera now to kind of conclude and finish up. Hopefully that will change in the future, but one of the awesome things that this is funding that people don't even think about is the GPU type technology is what is going to bring in artificial intelligence as well too. And you think about these selling for 3 times what they should for just the production. This is another byproduct of the blockchain and cryptocurrency, is it is funding the development of this technology that is going to bring us hopefully a lot better world of technology that can help us be more efficient, live to where we don't destroy the earth for our inhabitation, and hopefully get to a period of abundance and not one of scarcity where we've had to fight each other as a civilization and what so. And that's a whole different discussion. But again, these things go together, and it's awesome to understand it a little bit like we've talked about. So, you know, in conclusion, just take away from this that it is very important, and some of the cool things about it, and even when you're thinking about what field you're in or what field your children might be thinking about, a lot of things are going to change, but humans are important, and a lot of this stuff is going to help us. We're not going away, even though change scares some people, especially technology sometimes. So again, thank you so much for joining in. Next week we've got we're gonna totally change tracks. We're gonna have Frank Glover in here from Inspect My Home. An actual home inspector, to give you a little bit of insight in terms of what he does, some of the tips and tricks about selling your house or buying a house, or even just upkeeping things for general upkeep in terms of, you know, how do you take care of the investment that's one of, you know, people's biggest investments in their life, your home. And then the week after that, Tony is actually going to interview Susie Vincent about some branding tips and tricks and how to brand your business better. So again, thanks so much. Hope you're getting some of this beautiful sunshine, and spring's just around the corner. And of course, if there's anything we can ever do for you, you know, just reach out to us. We're here to help anytime. So have a good weekend.